Hello, I'm Melinda Mollineaux, and I currently live in Ottawa, which is the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Lekwungen Cheko'nein Nation. And I'm really pleased to present this work on the unceded traditional territory of the Musqueam people. So I actually became an artist in this territory in Vancouver, and at the time that I was making this work, I was thinking very, very deeply about myself as a Black woman and a descendant of stolen, enslaved peoples. And at that time, I was really interested in thinking about myself as a Black woman and an immigrant to this place called Canada, and really searching for ways that I could find myself reflected in the story of Canada and how to position myself here. At that time as well, I think that the dominant narrative was Black presence was only a recent phenomenon through immigration in the 50s, and I was really wanting to dig underneath that and see if there were longer histories to be found. And I had done some research and found that there was a longer history of Black presence in British Columbia, and so wanted to unearth that and make that present somehow, and build my own relationship and connection to it. Also at the time, as I was studying to be an artist, I was again interested in ideas of the representation of the body. How do we represent ourselves in a way that doesn't replicate the objectification that can happen? And was quite influenced by the thinking and writing of feminist conceptual artist Mary Kelly at the time, who was really gave me a tool and a way to think about how do you represent the self without presenting the body. And so this was something that was certainly was one of the pillars in this work. How do I unearth and make present a Black history and a Black presence, but not fall into the trap of presenting the Black body in order for it to be objectified again, right, by an objectifying eye. And certainly I think the history of slavery where, the personhood, right, of Black people those two things did not go together, and so there is a very, very strong, for me, sensitivity to how I can present my personhood in a way that doesn't get contained or objectified. So for this work, I had learned that there was a community of Black settlers who came to Victoria in the mid-1800s, and every August 1st, they used to have Emancipation Day picnics, which was a kind of a somber celebration of the end of slavery in the British colonies. And so they would have picnics at Cadboro Bay every August 1st. So part of my research was to be in Victoria and search archives, graveyards, newspapers, just for any traces of those people who I had learned lived here. And so for me, this work was really a kind of a physical act of remembrance somehow, to find them, and then to somehow just remember them and contemplate them as beings, as human beings with subjectivities, with interior lives. The text really emerged from my research and my discovery and of the names of some of the Black folk who lived in Victoria at that time. And so for me, reading archives, etc., and gravestones, I collected these names, and whatever bits of information I found about them, I wanted to sort of get into the space of an interiority for each of them, to bring them alive somehow. And so I wrote this text as a way to help remember what it was that I had discovered about them. So for example, with linguist Gibbs's bones ached, it's because he was incredibly busy. He's a businessman in was a politician, he was an advocate for the community. Sarah mastered me in music because she was a piano teacher and she taught children how to play the piano. Watching Richard scan the horizon, I think that had something to do with the fact that he was a bit of a wanderer and he was always looking for other horizons. Stephen quietly folded the surface because he worked as a waiter in one of the fancy restaurants in Victoria, and I imagined him folding a white tablecloth. So these were ways for me to remember something subjective about those people that I discovered. So in my practice, I've always focused on photography as the main pillar of my practice, and particularly analog photography and pinhole photography. For me, it's because it is more expressly a medium of light and time, and I've always been interested in photography as a means to experience and interrogate memory and the passage of time. So I chose to work with pinhole photography here precisely because it's not just a capturing of an image or a place, it's a capturing of a moment in time, the time that it takes to take the image. So these were fairly long exposures, between 10 and 25 seconds. And also the fact that the work itself and the research itself is also pointing back in time as well. There's a kind of an anteriority, I think, in photographs. Time is always in a photograph, whether it's a photograph, an old one, whether it's a photograph that is photographing something in the present, but 20 years into the future, it's time really kind of, I think, hovers in the medium of photography. The other reason I'm interested in it is just the act of the photographing itself. So taking these photographs, I become an extension of the camera in a way. So, it's my eyes that are the light meter, it's my body, which is the tripod, and it's my hand, which is the shutter. And so, the pinhole photograph, the camera itself, which is a very, very simple box with a hole, a wooden box camera. And so, in a strange way, it's like the photographs are a gesture of the artist, of myself, in the moment of the making of it. I almost think of it as a painting somehow. When you stand in front of a painting and you see the gesture marks of the artist, it's a kind of a haunting presence of the painter in front of the painting. And I feel as though using pinhole photography, my presence in the making of the photos is my way of asserting my presence in the works. Again, in that way, without allowing myself to be objectified or contained within the larger narratives of how blackness has been understood in colonial systems that we live in. Also, what was really important to me is the fact that along with being pinhole photographs, these are not digital prints. So these are printed chemically in the darkroom from the negatives, from a pinhole camera, and on fiber-based paper. And again, it's that materiality of the nature of photography, that it is a medium of light and time, and chemistry, in fact, rather than just a digital capturing of a moment. So the physicality of the photograph itself also was important to me, just to be true to that idea of photography as a medium of light and time. So this work has been remade. It was originally made in 1998, 1999, and I'm so thrilled to be able to remake it today, precisely because I think my understanding of what it means to live and inhabit this space is a continuous process of evolution and deepening. And at the time when I first made the work, I was aware that Cadboro Bay was the site of a traditional indigenous village, close to where the present-day yacht club exists. So this photo is actually close to where the yacht club actually is positioned, and it was my own conscious way of just recognizing that history. That, of course, didn't come through very, very strongly in the first making of the work, and 20 years later, I've done a little bit further research. I know a little bit more now that this location is the site of the ancestral Lekwungen Cheko'nein people, and the name of the village on the site is Sungayka, which means snow patches. And so making the work now really allowed me to bring that increased sensitivity to actually what it means for us to inhabit and take up space on this land, that it's not terra nullius, it's not empty land, and for us just to simply wander into. And so I'm quite happy to be able to have the opportunity to bring that increased awareness that I have and consciousness that I have about the implications, I think, of my presence here into the work. So I think that has changed a lot. And that's an ongoing process, I think, of deepening and reckoning about how we're implicated, right? How we're implicated, I think, in the ongoing systems and stories of colonialism in this territory. I think what hasn't really changed a lot for me still is how we really grapple with the still little known histories and understanding of Black diasporic history as part of that overarching colonial system, which is extractive by nature and built on stolen land, extractive resources, stolen labor, and stolen people. Perhaps that changing consciousness and integration of Black histories into our larger understanding of the colonial project is starting to advance now.